Shaktipat Seer 2.
Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome to this satsang and exposition of the chakras. Last week we talked about the anatomy of the human body and how that chakras are neither nervous plexes or some kind of physical structure. They're not to do with anything physical, corporeal, but instead chakras, we talked about, were centers where different powers aggregate, archetypal powers around which the Kundalini is flowing. The Kundalini is flowing. It's coiled around eight of these chakras, from below to above and back again, and creating this dynamic power system. Your body contains the very powers of the universe and of God himself and herself, just in a smaller form, in a microcosmic form. So basically we're going over this, and we also talked about the yogic interpretation of the chakras as well, and not just from the anatomical perspective. So we will continue this week talking about the experiences of the yogis, and also the Kundalini. Here we'll talk about what is the Kundalini, what is the chakra, what is the experiences of our yogis. Alright, so let's begin reading. Experiences of the yogis. Kundalini Yoga forms a highly important part of the yoga practices and has been practiced by the yogi gurus and their disciples from time immemorial in India. The great yogi Shankaracharya, who became famous by expounding the monistic doctrine of Brahman in his well-known commentary Shahirakabhashaya on the Brahma Sutra of Vyas, had experience of this yoga and gave an account of this in two of his unique works, Ananda Lahiri, Wave of Bliss, and Yoga Tarawali. In Ananda Lahiri, the essence of Shankara's direct experience in Kundalini Yoga is presented. The Ananda Lahiri is considered to be such an important document that there are now known to be 36 commentaries on it. The work is an elaboration of the principles of this yoga contained in the Shubhogadaya, a stotra by the celebrated Gaudapada. It indicates that Gaudapada himself practiced Kundalini Yoga and presented certain principles of this yoga in the Shubhogadaya. Gaudapada, who was almost certainly taught this yoga by his guru Shuka, the son of the famous Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas, was expected to teach it to his disciple, the famous yogi Govindapada, and Shankara must have attained this knowledge from the latter. This shows the great antiquity of Kundalini Yoga. So here, the author, Sundar Goswami, is saying how that this yoga goes back all the way to the ages of sage Vedavyas. Shankara has clearly stated what happens in Kundalini Yoga when Kundalini, being roused, passes through the Brahma Nadi. And remember, the Brahma Nadi is it's the center nadi inside of the Sushumna. The Sushumna Nadi, which is one of three main wirings of these three, forces in your body, the Ida, the Pingala, and the Sushumna, through which prana flows. The Sushumna is the main consciousness force in the center, the main life channel. And so it's saying the Brahma Nadi is in the center of the Sushumna. So in the center of the Sushumna, you are connected to this higher potential experience of reality. As Brahman. Shankara has clearly stated what happens in Kundalini Yoga when Kundalini, being roused, passes through the Brahma Nadi and pierces all the chakras and reaches Sahasrara in union with Paramashiva, and then returns again to the Muladhara. He says, having pierced all the principles situated in the chakras, earth in the Muladhara, water in the Svadhisthana, fire in the Manipur, air in the heart, void, Akash, and above it, Vishuddha, mind between the eyebrows, and having thus passed through the Kulapat, that is the path through which the Kundalini, Kundalini, that is the Kundalini power passes, and having passed through the Kulapat, that is the path through which the power of the Kundalini, the Kundalini passes, it is the Brahma Nadi which starts from the Muladhara and terminates in the Nirvana chakra, which is of course in the center of the crown on top of the head, where the Sushumna also terminates. You, Mother Kundalini, are in union, in mind-transcendent concentration, with your husband, Paramashiva, in the secret aspect of the Sahasrara chakra, that is, the all-absorbing path to infinity. It is beyond the Sahasrara chakra, and it consists of Bindu, Nada, Shiva Shakti, Shakala Shiva, and then Parama Shiva, where the union in yoga occurs. And remember, Shiva is part Jiva, part Vishnu Tattva, right? He's all these things. He's part Shakti. Shiva is the undifferentiated consciousness of all that is. It's one. There's no differentiation in Shiva. Shiva is one. So it represents this archetypal Achintya Beta Beta Tattva in some ways. You could say. So, the life essence flows like a stream from your feet. And of course, feet symbolize union in yoga, which is there. There's a lot of symbolism when they talk about, Prabhupada or someone talks about lotus feet. The life essence flows from your stream, from your feet like a stream, by which the whole body is sprinkled, and then you again return to your own abode, and in doing so, you cause the chakras to become manifest. There, in the Muladhara, you assume your own form, like a coiled serpent. That is, 3.5 coils are on the Swayambhu Linga, and sleep, become latent in samadhi in the cavity of the Kula Kundalini, the triangle in the Muladhara. And at this, I thought there's something interesting you guys might find kind of cool here. There's something here where the author gives Narada Muni's interpretation of what the chakras are. Narada Muni himself, no less a rishi than Narada. Here we go, I found it. So no less a rishi than Narada Muni himself is talking about the Muladhara chakra, and it's very interesting to us about what he says. Here, check it out. The lotus, and remember what we've just read. We've just read that. There in the Muladhara you assume your own form. So he's saying that in the Muladhara the Kundalini assumes its own form. And then Narada Muni, let's see what Narada Muni has to say about the Muladhara and the Kundalini assuming its own form in the Muladhara. The lotus turned Muladhara has 4 petals of red color, which are the letters Wa, Sha, Cha, and Sa, of a golden color. Inside the Muladhara is a single triangle, which is in the nature of will, knowledge, action. Inside the triangle is Swayambhu Linga, shining like 10 million suns. Above it is the Kama Bij with Kala Bindu Nada, that is to say, Kling, the Kling mantra, Kling, Kling, Kling. Above the triangle in the Swayambhu Linga shining like 10 million suns is the Kama Bij in the Muladhara. Above it is Kundalini, brilliant like a flame. Kundalini is Shyam. Narada Muni is saying Kundalini is Shyam. Remember, that's another name for Krishna. Kundalini is Shyam, that is black or deep green in color. Black or deep green in color. And it is in the nature of Krishna. This is Narada Muni himself. He's saying that the Kundalini is Shyam and is in the nature of Krishna. She is established in Krishna. The Kundalini is established in Krishna, says Narada Muni. How do you like that? Okay, continuing. There in the Muladhara, you assume your own form in Krishna, like a coiled serpent, and sleep in the cavity of the Kulakunda, the triangle of the Muladhara. Shankara has also mentioned the names of the following chakras in the Ananda Lahiri, etc. He's talking about, you can find this anywhere where he's talking about different chakras. Muladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipur, Vishuddha, Agnya. No clear mention of Anahata, but in verse 38, the word Sangvit Kamala, knowledge lotus, occurs, and this is interpreted referring to the Anahata, or the heart chakra. But Shankara has clearly used the word Anahata in verses 3 and 9 of the Yoga Tattwali. Shankara has disclosed the contraction process, which is part of the mantra process in rousing Kundalini and Kundalini Yoga. The contraction process comprises locks, bandhas, in conjunction with pranayam. Shankara has said that by the application of anal lock, mulaband, navel lock, udinaband, and neck or chin lock, jalantarabandha, in combination with sahita kumbhaka, that is breathing in a specific way, which induces a type of breathless state. We'll practice some of this sahita breathing a little bit later. It's really good stuff. It enables the Kundalini to push through the Brahma Nadi. Anyway, Kundalini is roused and enters in the Sushumna by means of all of these bandhas, or these locks. And this is going to be a big part of the Laya Yoga ashram, the Uttama Shakti side. Is going to be these locks that you apply to rouse the Kundalini. Kundalini is roused and enters into the Sushumna by these locks, that is, the Brahma Nadi lying within the Sushumna. Moreover, he states that Sahita Kumbhaka, that is the type of breath suspension pranayam that I was talking about, that we will practice. Practice in conjunction with anal, navel, and chin locks finally develops into Kewala Kumbhaka, automatic breath suspension. Normal kumbhaka, sahita kumbhaka is like I said, it's like a pranayam type of breath suspension. You breathe in for a certain amount of time, and then you hold it for a certain amount of time, and you exhale, and then you hold it again, etc. Or rather, you exhale and then you inhale and then you hold it. I think you only inhale or hold it when you're inhaling, if I'm correctly. Yeah, I'm pretty sure about that. Anyway, let's see here. Moreover, he states that Sahita Kumbhaka, practice in conjunction with anal, navel, and chin locks, finally develops into Kewala Kumbhaka, automatic breath suspension. So for the first one, the anal lock that he's talking about, the anal lock, what it does is it harnesses the apana flow. There's 5 vayus in your body, 5 vayus, or 5 pranas. They all have different names, but they're all prana. This specific prana is called apana. If you feel the area in between the anus and the genitals, this is where the apana flow arises from. It's the center of the body. And the Mula Bandh is an exercise where you contract the muscles down there in certain ways, along with breathing, breath suspension. You draw the prana, the apana, from this center, and you raise it up within yourself. And as it is raised up within yourself, it's circulating through the body. And they explain exactly how this process affects the movement of the Kundalini into the Sushumna and the Brahmanadi, and it starts to rise, and etc. So I will be putting up an exercise on Mula Bandh on the Uttama Shakti site, definitely, as soon as possible. Let's see. Tailanga Swami, the great yoga master, has also mentioned that the contraction process, he says, by the application of the contraction process consisting of different locks, the door of Kundalini should be opened, and the passage leading to liberation, that is, the Chitrini Nadi, in which the chakras are strung, should be pierced by Kundalini. The Chitrini Nadi is the Nadi in between the Sushumna and the Brahma Nadi. The Sushumna is the central Nadi of the body, and inside of it there is the Bhadra Nadi, and inside of that is the Chitrini Nadi, and inside of that is the Brahma Nadi. So, the chakras are contained within the Chitrini Nadi, and the Kundalini, as it pierces through them, it absorbs into itself, into Param Shiva, into Supreme Consciousness. And then there's no more what the Buddhists would call outpourings. In other words, there's no more losing of energy by being lost in the material consciousness. There's no more leaking of energy by being focused on some material thing. Because your life itself, the Kundalini, is your consciousness. I've read in this Laya Yoga book, this master says that Kundalini is consciousness. So when the Kundalini expands, your consciousness expands. You feel it expanding. And so it's a very definitive process. It's not like, someone comes along and tells you to chant the specific mantra your whole life, and then that's going to give you liberation. This is I don't care what those people say. This is an actual etheric, pranic, kundalinic, and physical bioenergetic transformation of your whole body. The great yoga master has mentioned the contraction process. He says the application of the contraction process, by consisting of different locks, the door of Kundalini should be opened, and the passage leading to liberation, that is in the Chitrini Nadi, where the chakras are strung, should be pierced by Kundalini. This yoga, that is Kundalini yoga, should be practiced after hearing the Vedanta, that is purifying by hearing and thinking of Brahman, by having Brahman, real God, before we attempt these things. And inner, I like to call it just etheric health. I don't think of it as like superpowers or anything like that. I think of it as just having sound health, energetic health, kundalinic health, health of your consciousness, health of your energy centers. This is just a health consideration. Because in reality, this is where all true health comes from. This is where immortality comes from. There's a reason why that if you look on any hospital in the world, what do you see? You see a logo of the damn Kundalini and the chakras. Any hospital in the world. There's the caduceus of Hermes with the 2 serpents around the chakras. You can't make this up. I mean, this is... The well-known Tantrika yogi Rama Prasad has recounted his experiences of Kundalini Yoga in some of his spiritual songs, Padawali, he composed. He relates that the Muladhara contains 4 petals in which are situated the earth principle and power Dakini, and here lies the Kundalini in 3.5 coils around Shiva, Svayambhu Linga. The Svaristhana has 6 petals where the deities Vishnu and Varuna and the power Rakini reside. The Manipur has 10 petals and a triangular region containing the beach of Wahni, and the Lakini resides here. The Anahata has 12 petals and a hexagonal region in the pericarp containing the Vayu beach, that is Yang. There resides the power Kakini. The 6-petaled lotus Vishuddhi contains vowels, the first 16 mantrika letters, and there the deity Vishnu is seated on a naga, the celebrated serpent, or on an elephant, and power Shakini. The Dvidala, that is the 2-petaled space between the 2-petaled, the Agnya, the 3rd eye, is situated in the space between the eyebrows, and on it are the mantrika letters Hang and Kshang. There is situated Chandra beach, that is Tang, from which nectar oozes. There is situated Chandra beach, from which nectar oozes. Tang, 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 tang. I've never tried that Bij mantra before. For the 3rd eye, it's very good. From which nectar comes. Here also Shiva Ling, Itara Linga, a circle and a triangle. It is the seat of the mind. Here's the Manas chakra, the seat of the mind, the sensorium. This is the clear picture of the chakras. Brahma Prasad also states that Kula Kundalini is in the Muladhara, that is the power of the Kundalini. The Kundalini itself, right, is extending throughout the body, but there is a special aspect of the Kundalini which is in the root. The very power of the Kundalini itself, right? The generator of the Kundalini. Okay. Rama Prasad also states that Kula Kundalini, the power of the Kundalini, is in the Muladhara. She is also in the Sahasrara and the Chintamanipura, that is the Hrit chakra. That's very interesting. It says that she is also in the Chintamanipura, that is the home of touchstone, Chintamani touchstone. The the Hridaya chakra, and this is different from the heart chakra, the Hrid chakra, Hridaya chakra. Although it's down there, it's just below the heart chakra. I have a picture of it here in this book. It's located, let's see here. The Hrit chakra is directly below the Anahata. Interesting. They put the Manipur well below the Anahata in the belly, almost. And the sacral plexus they put just above the genitals. Interesting. Seems about right. So the Hrit chakra, the Hridaya, or the Hrit, H-R-I-T, they spell it. And this is very interesting because it reminds me of the Buddhist figure Hri, which is basically the same as Hari, or Lord Krishna. The Kula Kundalini is in the Muladhara, also in the Sahasrar, and the Chintamani Pura. That's incredible. That's pretty much exactly what I learned from Alice Bailey, is that there's 3 main Kula Kundalinis, 3 main powers of the Kundalini itself. And they stated that they were located in the heart, the root, and the crown, or that there's this triangle of force between the root and the genitals, the chest, the spine, the back of the spine, and the what's that? The spleen, I believe it's called. That one. And also there's a triangle in the head between the back of the head, the front of the head, and the top of the head. That's what Alice Bailey says. But according to here, the Kula Kundalini itself is in the crown, the Hrit chakra, and in the root. Very, very interesting. Very, 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 very interesting. Concentration on chakras, deities, etc. is to be done in the interior of the body, according to the instructions of the Guru. There is Brahma and 4 other deities, Dakini and 5 other powers, the Lord of Elephants, Gajendra, Makara, Ram, black antelope, black antelope, and the second elephant. The realization of these occurs when there is automatic breath suspension and deep concentration. In other words, that's called Kambaka. Kambaka, which is this breath suspension. When you do Sahita breathing, where you're regulating the pace of your breathing, and you've practiced meditation, in the past, it's not too hard to get this breathless state. For some reason, the prana in your body through meditation is exhibiting a higher potential, so you're able to breathe for longer times. You can and you just keep inhaling and inhaling and inhaling and inhaling. You can go for 30 seconds like this, and exhaling. You can go for another 30 seconds if you've ever done this in meditation. So using this particular type of breathing with Sahita style enables you to get the Kambaka, or the breathless state. And the reason why the breathless state is so important is because the Ida and Pingala nadis are what are responsible for your inhalation and exhalation factors. The flowing of the Ida and the Pingala nadis as they interchange is the reason for the inhalation and the exhalation. So in this breathless state, as you're inhaling and as you're reaching the pinnacle of your inhalation, you notice that you have no need to breathe or anything. You just become breathless for about 10 or 15, 20 seconds. And in those states, the Ida and the Pingala nadi, that is to say the positive and negative charge nadis, are not flowing. Just the Sushumna is flowing. So the Kundalini can more easily pass through the Sushumna because it's not being, the nadis are cleared. The channels are clear. So that's why the breathless state is important. And in this particular type of Bhuta Shuddhi pranayam and Sahita breathing, the breathless state and also all of this is strengthened with visualizations, mantras, deity concentration, etc., etc. Where were we? The realization of these occurs when there is automatic breath suspension and deep concentration. Rama Prasad's own chosen place for concentration was the Hrit chakra, the Hridaya chakra, that is right below the heart center, or it could be within the heart chakra. According to this diagram here, It's actually not really evident whether it's within, or I think it's saying that it's a little bit below it, actually. Yes, it's a little bit below the Anahata. Either way, Rama Prasad would meditate on the Harit chakra. His own experience is that Kundalini in the Muladhara as well is, for instance, my first Kundalini. He says also there are 4 Shivas residing in the place. Then wouldn't the goddess of fortune be Vishnu? And Vishnu is the one who is reclining on this lotus. I think that it's better to say Vishnu is in the center of the 1,000-petaled lotus. But, you know, Vishnu and Shiva are the same. They're one. Harihara. Either way, the 1,000-petaled lotus, a yogi always does concentration on Kundalini in the form, Kundalini in form in the Muladhara and Sahasrara. Interesting. So that's an important. I'm gonna mark this in my book. Actually, that's an important thing to remember here. Concentration should always be done on Kundalini in having form in the Sahasrara and the Muladhara. Very interesting. So that's Ishta Devata. Kundalini in form is Ishta Devata, Radha Krishna. All these statements indicate that he had full knowledge of the chakras and realized Kundalini and chakras directly in yoga. Ramakrishna, a great yogi and spiritual teacher and prophet, has expressed his own experiences of Kundalini and the chakras. He saw how Kundalini, being roused, ascends through the Shushumna, in fact through the Brahma Nadi, and as Kundalini enters into a chakra, the chakra turns its face upward and quote-unquote blooms. He saw that the roused Kundalini passes from the Muladhara into the Svadhisthana, and then to the Manipur and other chakras, and finally to the Sahasrara. He says that the chakra system is like a plant with branches and flowers, all made of wax. He says that the chakra system is like a plant with branches and flowers, all made of wax. But actually, they're in the nature of life force, Chinmoy. Interesting. So the chakras are in the nature of life force. They're not made out of wax, they're made out of prana. Chinmoy. He speaks of one of his experiences when he saw that a youthful person resembling himself had entered the Sushumna and made each chakra turn upward and develop by deep contact with the tongue, one after another, from the bottom to the top. In this manner, he saw that the Muladhara, Shvanishtan, Manipur, Anahata, Vishuddha, Agnya, and Sahasrara had turned their heads upward and bloomed. Ramakrishna has described the movements of Kundalini as supreme force, Mahavayu. Remember that Vayu also means airs, just like the life airs of your body. You have Apana, Prana, Udana, etc. Let's see. Okay, so he has described the supreme force. The Kundalini is supreme force, Mahavayu. Mahavayu. Supreme force. And like I said, Vayu is prana, or air, life air. He experienced 5 forms of motion, of prana, I'm guessing, leading to samadhi. He described it as ant-like, monkey-like, frog-like, bird-like, and snake-like. When these 5 forms of motion reach the Sahasrar, or when these motions reach the Sahasrar, Samadhi is attained. Yes, that's very true. One feels these motions of Vayus in the body, and as they raise up and they reach the Sahasrar, you no longer have external consciousness. You close your eyes and there's a luminous light all pervading throughout the entire cosmos, and you don't feel your body. You feel that you're expanded into an ocean. You can see the heavens, you can see everything for yourself. No more guesswork. You are not in this world anymore after that point. The Vayus indicate that there is some kind of connection between yourself and the macrocosm that's causing this movement. That's why he calls it Mahavayu. There's a macrocosmic correspondence in the movement. You're somehow becoming a part of this macrocosmic Kundalini, this Maha Kundalini, Parama Shiva Shakti. This is my speculation anyway. Oh God, heaven forbid that I speculate. Oh my goodness. Anyway, he says, real spiritual knowledge does not arise if Kundalini is asleep. This is Ramakrishna himself saying, real spiritual knowledge does not arise if Kundalini is asleep. So there you have Ramakrishna saying you can't have real spiritual knowledge, you can't have real spiritual experience without this Kundalini. Kundalini is spiritual experience. Anybody who's had a spiritual experience has had an experience of Kundalini. He says real spiritual knowledge does not arise if Kundalini is asleep. And when Kundalini passes through the different chakras, various spiritual experiences occur. According to him, primordial supreme power, that is Adya Shakti, primordial supreme power, Adya Shakti, resides in all beings, in the Muladhara as Kula Kundalini, sleeping like a coiled serpent. The primordial supreme power is within you. It only needs to be roused with sincerity and love. The celebrated Vama, generally known as Vamakshep, an accomplished Tantric yogi, had direct perception of the Kundalini and the chakras. He says that the first practice in yoga for the initiated Tantrika is the rousing of the Kundalini. This yoga process is very ancient and highly scientific. In Kundalini Yoga, the practitioner experiences how Kundalini power, or Kundali power, that is coiled power, is working in different chakras and what is happening there. There are specific experiences associated with blissfulness in each chakra when Kundalini passes through it. These experiences are characteristic of the Tantric method. In other religions, there must be also some means of arousing Kundalini. And when we're talking about Tantric, remember, we're not talking about anything to do with sex. Just if you hear the word Tantric and you think about sex, put it out of your mind, because that's not what Tantric is really about. Tantric is not just that. That's a small part of Tantra. Tantra is really just this awakening of energy in your body, and it can be accomplished through all kinds of means and not just the sex thing. In other religions, there must be also some kind of way of arousing Kundalini. Otherwise, it is impossible to proceed beyond the lower mental plane. And we've seen this. I've seen this. You know, I've been paying very close attention to what's been going on in the New Age community, the YouTube, all this stuff. The people, I can tell very clearly if there's somebody who has some kind of Kundalini experience. And these are the people with genuine spiritual knowledge. These are the people who have pierced the Guru Chakra in the crown, and they're receiving divine wisdom. There's a big difference between that and someone like, Darrow 7 or something like this, who you can tell he has no Kundalini at all, no knowledge at all, just a complete fool. There's many people like that, and they're thinking that they're teachers, but you can't teach. You can't teach anything beyond the lower mental plane until you go beyond the lower mental plane. And this is only possible with the power of the Kundalini pushing you up into a higher place. That's it. This is the only force of higher consciousness that there is. So I don't care whether the Vaishnavas want to say that it's like Prabhupada said that Kundalini is sense gratification. What a bunch of nonsense that is. Direct bhakti, you can do direct bhakti to Kundalini. Just focus your attention on Kundalini, and that's bhakti. It's devotion. It says here in this book that focusing on Kundalini is the stage after Ishta Devata. After Ishta Devata, there's a focus on the Kundalini itself. Ishta Devata is the God in form. Let's see. Kundalini may be automatically aroused in intense love, intense happiness, intense sorrow, intense pain, and intense fear. But she may again return to the dormant state. That's why Guru's guidance is important. From his own experience in Kundalini Yoga, my Guru has said that Kundali power becomes dynamic in Muladhara by intense thought concentration in combination with the mantras, pranayam, bandhas, and passes upwards through the Brahma Nadi by piercing chakra after chakra, finally reaching the Sahasrara. I'm going to mark that little part too. That's interesting knowledge to have. When Kundalini reaches a chakra, the head of the chakra turns upwards, and the whole contents of the chakra, Mahabhuta, Tanmatra, deity, power, everything, first becomes fully illumined by the light from Kundalini, and then is absorbed into Kundalini. When Kundalini is roused, real concentration starts, and as she goes upwards, it deepens more and more. Thought concentration of the Bhuta Shuddhi process, that means the purification of the elements of the body, becomes transformed into real concentration through roused Kundalini. And this is the process that many of us have been experiencing in the last year or two or three. We've been experiencing the elements of our bodies being purified by the Kundalini as we focus on it. And here is the science of this. Where was I? Here. When thought concentration on Kundalini becomes most intense, the chakras automatically appear in consciousness that the Kundalini is about to be roused. The Sahasrara, the crown. When Kundalini becomes most intense, the chakras automatically appear in consciousness. That is to say, Shiva Shakti should be not first into the Sahasrara and then in the Hrit Chakra, where concentration should be done. And this is exactly what the Gaudiya Vaishnavas say. They say that this is what Krishna has said himself. Krishna has said himself, visualize me in the heart, meditate on me in the heart chakra, the Hrit Chakra, Hridaya Chakra. He said, to meditate on him in an 8-petal lotus in the Hrit Chakra. So, after the union of Kundalini with Param Shiva in thought concentration in Bhuta Shuddhi, Shiva Shakti should then be transformed into Ishta Devata, that is, into the object of your devotion. Lord Radha Krishna's should be transformed into Ishta Devata and then brought into the Shastra and then into the Harit Chakra, where concentration should be done. Thought concentration on Ishta Devata is a very efficient means of transforming thought concentration into real concentration. It is a great help in making Bhuta Shuddhi more effective in preparing the practitioner for the practice of Kundalini Yoga. It appears that thought concentration on Shiva Shakti in form as Ishta Devata is also an ancient practice and part of Bhuta Shuddhi, though usually omitted, and this is indicated in Shankara's Ananda Lahiri, verse 8. Continuing, this chapter is just titled Kundalini. Kundalini has been called Kundalini Shakti, power, that is, power in coil. Kundali Shakti means power in coil, a coiled power. The basic word is Kunda. Kund. That's interesting because you hear that word Kund a lot with regards to Radha Krishna's Leela. A forest, like a little forest grove that they enjoy pastimes in, is called a Kund. And there's definitely something to that in relation to the Kundalini. The basic word Kunda or Kundala, meaning what is spiral or in a coil. Interesting. The term Kundalini or Kundali has been used in yoga in a technical sense and has been called the spiral form power or energy. So Kundalini may be called spiraline, and we will elaborate on the technical meaning of it later. Kundalini has been called spirit fire, serpent power, serpentine power, annular power, cosmic electricity, I like that one, and so on. This does not help very much in the understanding of the real nature of Kundali power. On the physical plane, all energy appears in chemical or as chemical, mechanical, and electrical. Can we find any trace of Kundali energy in muscular, nervous, glandular, respiratory, cardiac, alimentary, and eliminative functions of the body in cellular activities at the atomic and subatomic levels? Is it possible to find this energy playing a part in the mental field, in perception, intellection, and affectivity? Kundali energy cannot be identified with the energy operating in the body at all its levels, or with the tissues or structures of the body. The energy functioning in the body is physiochemical in nature. It is derived from food, and when food is not supplied, it comes from the tissues of the body. Right. So the energy in the body comes from food and not from Kundalini. So this energy is actually food tissue energy. Food is converted into energy in tissues in the body on one side, and on the other the tissues are converted into energy to maintain the more vital parts of the body, as in inanition, it says. If Kundalini is identified with the chemical energy, then it is also the tissues of the body. Such a gross transformation of Kundalini is contradictory to its real nature. Is it possible to identify Kundalini with special forms of energy in the body, as for example muscular energy? Here the same objection arises. Muscular energy is essential chemical and derived from food, etc., etc. the brain and mind are bridged by nadi and subconscious mechanism. The nature of the Kundalini. So now we're going to talk about what Kundalini is positively. Up to now, we have said what Kundalini is not. The neti deliberation is very helpful in understanding the real nature of Kundalini. And he said that it's not the vagus nerve, it's not the, not any kind of muscular energy, not any kind of physiochemical energy. Kundalini, when roused, exhibits the control, and at the same time it is reflected on mind, and this results in it becoming a conscious phenomena, where the will is directly infused by Kundalini energy when it is able to cause such an extraordinary control power. But it's different from nervous energy, etc., etc. Okay, so we have said what Kundalini is not. It can be practiced with a brief consideration of the energy system operating in the body, even at the risk of using some repetition. The characteristics of the living body is to exhibit activities vis-a-vis cellular, nervous, glandular, and muscular, which are associated with livingness. The energy which supports these activities is derived from the tissue substances, carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, by catabolic process. On the other hand, the decay of the tissue substances is prevented by the anabolic utilization of food. This energy release is a chemical process. This energy, come tissue in material, is material in character, and perhaps it may be sufficient to explain physical activities, but really it is not very simple. The phenomena of consciousness is intermingled with the physical activities. Of course, in most of the vital activities of the body, consciousness is not involved. But conscious actions are an integral part of the bodily functions. Perception, intellection, thought, attention, and willing are not possible without consciousness. But in the body, only physiochemical events are observed in perception. How consciousness is evoked or linked with the unconscious physiochemical process is not known. We cannot say that consciousness is located in a certain area of the brain and is ignited by the neuronal conduction, because the same process does not cause consciousness to appear in sleep. The observed fact that the damage of a brain spot produces unconsciousness may not really indicate that it is a seed of consciousness. It may mean lack of interaction or an effacement of the material replication of consciousness, that the whole nervous path and brain are not utilized in subconscious, generally known as extrasensory mode of perception, which is definitely occurs, clearly shows that consciousness is beyond the brain. So he's saying that in subconscious perception, that is extrasensory perception, subtle perception of the subtle realm, the nervous system and nervous paths of the brain are not utilized. Therefore, what is consciousness? It can't be the brain. If this is so, then there must be some form of energy which is not based on physiochemical system of the body, but is operative in its super physical character. This subtle energy system is the quote-unquote wireless system, which operates without being vehicled by the nerves. Technically, it is called the nadi system. The wired, or the nervous system, is an extension of the wireless, or nadi system, into the material field. In the nadi field, dynamic prana energy is in constant motion. What is the static counterpart of dynamic prana? Take an atom, for example. It is the composite of two forms of energy. Energy in motion and energy in static form, called the nucleus. If we regard Nadi chakra, or field, as similar to an atom, then prana is its electrons. But what is the nucleus? This is the first time we are compelled to inquire, What is the static form of energy as the background of dynamic prana? Where are we? Under the control influence, pranic energy functions powerfully and harmoniously, and the force motions take right directions. The control influence is the Sushumna Nadi. So under the control of the Sushumna Nadi, the Kundalini, prana of your body functions powerfully and harmoniously, and the force motions take right directions. These effects are shown both in the body and mind. The body becomes purified, healthy, and vigorous and diseaseless. The mind becomes clear, focused, and better controlled. This is itself a great achievement in one's life. The method consists in developing a Sushumnite force motion to act successfully on the static force, which must have been polarized with dynamic prana. We experience a transference of control element to the active pranic energy, and it is due to the static source, because this process is technically the nadis again are the fuse, these life airs, these balance and purify the influence of the nadis in the body. Force field, I should say, around the body. This fact also indicates that dynamic prana functions both in the body and in the mind. It regulates in a specific manner the functions of the body. Pranic concentration is the transformation of diversified pranic activities. And remember, prana is the 5 vayus, the 5 life airs on which your soul is riding. Prana moves in a physical plane, it moves in the mental plane, it moves in the spiritual plane. Prana moves in all planes. It is the sustaining, active life principle on every plane. It's the mother of all life, prana. And there are 5 types in your body. So Kundalini and prana bear an intimate relation to one another as the static and dynamic aspects of like an atom, like a neutron and an electron. The chakras are the electrons, and this Kula Kundalini is the neutron in the base of the spine, and in the Hrit chakra and the Sahasrara. So there's that. An example of increased pranic potency is to levitate the body. This fact already indicates that pranic forces can operate in the body directly. Thirdly, a state of pranic latency or suspended animation is produced when pranic energy is absorbed step by step into an unknown power. So we find that an influence of an unknown power is completely hidden from our observation, and its presence unsuspected under ordinary conditions of life. Whereas under certain unusual circumstances, it is exercised on pranic dynamism, and ultimately there is a possibility of complete withdrawal of the pranic function. This unknown power has been called in yoga Kundalini. Ordinarily, it is latent, but under certain special conditions, it becomes patent or active. What is the real nature of Kundalini? It has been argued that energy polarizes itself as static and dynamic, and the dynamic form is pranic force, and its static support is Kundalini. But you should remember that each of these things contains the essence of the other one. So something which is active might have a little bit of latency to it, and something which is latent might be a little bit active. Where were we? This is observable. The sum total of, can we trace this relation? What is the real nature of Kundalini? It has been argued that energy polarizes itself into static and dynamic, and the dynamic form is the pranic force, and its static support is Kundalini. Can we trace this relation between prana and Kundalini? The sum total of the activities in which the body, the life force, and the mind are involved is the dynamic aspect of our existence. And the whole phenomena may be called pranic dynamism. This is observable. But can prana function alone without a static background? It is the normal functioning. In its normal functioning, there is no indication of what is the static aspect of prana. But if the polarization of energy, if there is the polarization of energy, rather, the dynamic form must have a static form, and consequently, prana must have its static form. This static form has been considered as Kundalini. The static form of prana is Kundalini. Everything which has prana has Kundalini, just like the sun which shines above your head is radiating prana and also has a Kula Kundalini path. There is an intimate relation to Kundalini, of Kundalini with prana. That there is an intimate relation of Kundalini with prana is indicated specially in pranic concentration and suspended animation. These two phenomena definitely show the influence of Kundalini on prana. In a state of normal pranic function, no relationship between them is observable. It is because prana functions as its own power, and these energy functions are supported by static Kundalini silently. But there are instances when Kundalini acts on prana, and this active influence of Kundalini changes the character of the normal functions of prana. In this case, Kundalini is expected to be dynamic, at least partially. Then what should we take to be the static support of the dynamic Kundalini? The active influence of Kundalini on prana can be explained by assuming that it is due to an emanation of force from Kundalini, which itself remains static or partially static. But when prana is absorbed by Kundalini, does it still remain static? The following are signs of gradual pranic absorption. First, a motionless body. Second, the degrees of metabolism. Then, basal metabolism. Decrease of metabolism lower, then basal metabolism. Third, stoppage of vital functions of the body. Fourth, an operation of sensory system. It appears that pranic absorption is associated with the corresponding change in Kundalini from its static to dynamic form. Interesting. Pranic absorption is associated with a corresponding change in Kundalini from its static to its dynamic form. The experiences of the yogis support this. The yogis experience directly that Kundalini is roused in the Muladhara center and passes upwards through the Brahma Nadi, piercing all the chakras to the Sahasrara. This means that the static Kundalini becomes dynamic in Kundalini Yoga and exhibits motion, the Kundali force, motion. Consequently, Kundalini leaves the Muladhara and goes to Sahasrara. Interesting. So this latent Kundalini becomes active. It moves from Muladhara to Sahasrara. Some objections have been raised against the actual rousing and passing of Kundalini from Muladhara to Sahasrara. The Muladhara has been considered as the static pole in relation to the whole organism. Oh, very, 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 very interesting. Interesting. If we call this pole static, the material pole, if we call it static, that makes a lot of sense. Because you look at someone who's completely lost in material consciousness, right? What's their life? Their life is absolutely static. Correct. It might appear very, hectic and a lot of shit going on, you know, if they're like going out and getting drunk and partying and all this stuff. But it's still very static in that it's not growing. It's not going anywhere. It's just depleting itself. And you'll see these people, they're not happy people. But I have this theory that the further you get away from the center, or Bhagwan, Krishna, the further you get away, the more static everything becomes. It's like a centrifuge. It takes on less potency, and it becomes more crystallized, more frozen in form and name, more frozen in its objectification, in its mentalization. The material world is like a freezing of mental ideas, because in the spiritual realm everything is dynamic. It's melting against one another and you know, exchanging rasas of wonder and amazement. But here there's not that exchange, and so because of that lack of dynamism, everything is rotting and crystallizing and becoming form. Either way, where were we here? The Muladhara has been considered as the static pole, and for people who are who are going to study Uttama Shakti and the associated teachings, the idea of polarity here is very important to this whole process of regaining God consciousness. Polarity is crucial. Let's see. Muladhara has been considered as the static pole in relation to the whole organism. In the Muladhara, Kundalini as static power maintains the dynamic form of energy, which is the sum total of the activities of the living energy. Maintains the dynamic form of energy. So that's important to understanding what is the Kundalini, why should I care, what is it, it's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo, is it a bunch of stupid materialism, is it a bunch of magic nonsense? This is what it is. In the Muladhara, Kundalini as the static power is maintaining the dynamic form of energy, which is the sum total of the activities of the living organism. You know, all of the activities in your body are being maintained by the static power at the base, the root of the spine. And that's exactly what Alice Bailey has also said in her texts on the treatise of cosmic fire, a treatise on cosmic fire. Let's see. Kundalini aesthetic power maintains the dynamic form of energy, which is the sum total of activities of the living organism. So Kundalini cannot be made dynamic. It always remains static in the Muladhara. The rising of Kundalini has been interpreted as sending forth an emanation or ejection in the likeness of Kundalini, which passes through the various chakras and becomes united with Maha Kundalini in the Sahasrara. And in this process, the coiled Kundalini does not actually move from the Muladhara. It has been further stated that if Kundalini leaves the Muladhara and goes upward, then it means the Kundalini ceases to be Kundalini. In this case, dynamic Kundalini power will enhance the vital vigor instead of causing the suspension of animation. And so it has been concluded that ordinarily prana is diffused over the whole organism, and the pranic dynamism is supported by static Kundalini in the Muladhara. So the pranic field of your body, which you'll eventually start to become more conscious of this field, this force field, this nadi field around your body, is supported by the static Kundalini in the Muladhara. The static Kundalini in the Muladhara is this this anchor of life and energy, this support. In Kundalini Yoga, prana becomes converged, and this is also supported by static Kundalini in the Muladhara. The theory of the non-ascent of Kundalini and Kundalini emanation has been specially advanced by Professor Prananatha Mukhopadhyaya, Vivekananda. Oh wait, no, not Vivekananda. Prananatha Mukhopadhyaya. Vivekananda has clearly said that Kundalini, the coiled up energy, can be roused and made active and consciously made to pass upward through the Sushumna, where it acts upon center after center. He further says that the rousing of Kundalini is the only means of attaining divine wisdom, and when it passes from center over center, layer after layer of the mind opens up. Layer after layer of the mind opens up. He also admits that a minute portion of Kundalini can, as a small current, be set free and may pass through the Sushumna. A minute portion of Kundalini can be set free and pass through the Sushumna. However, according to Vivekananda, the rousing of the Kundalini and its passing through the chakras are facts and are intimately associated with the lighting up of dormant layers of the mind. But under certain conditions, some currents from Kundalini may pass through the Sushumna. Interesting. Aravinda recognizes the actual passing of Kundalini to Sahasrara, and also an ejection of Kundalini as the essential change. In other words, the full growth of superconsciousness are allowed. It is not necessary to is the permanent static center. The Muladhara has been evolved last. The Muladhara has been evolved last. After all other chakras came into being, pranic dynamism is in the form of prananation, that is, pranic radiation, has caused the emergence of the chakras. Before the formation of the Muladhara, pranic dynamism started to operate. In that case, its static polarity could not be static Kundalini in the Muladhara, but some other static power centered somewhere. The yogis say that it was 3.5 coiled Kundalini residing in Sahasrara, which was the static support of pranic dynamism in the beginning. That's so interesting, because I've always read that you're supposed to have this Kundalini awakening coming from below in the root, going above to the crown, but what happened to me was exactly the opposite. And it says here that actually the root is not the first chakra, it's the last chakra. And that the Sahasrara, the crown, is actually the first support of pranic dynamism in the beginning. And after the emergence of the Muladhara, the 3.5 coiled Kula Kundalini became the static support of the dynamic prana, whose activities now have been more diffused and diversified to maintain animation in the gross physical body. Also, there is an 8-coiled Kundalini lying through the Sushumna with 1 coil in each chakra. So the Kundalini is not only coiled around the Muladhara chakra at the base of the spine or at the Sahasrara at the top, but it's actually coiled through all of the chakras, coiled around them. That's what you see in the drawings. You'll see pictures of the Ida and Pingala Sushumna nadis going around and through the chakras. So the rousing of Kundalini in the Muladhara and its ascent will not cause the total collapse of the living organism. The rousing of Kundalini is the dynamization of Kula Kundalini. The rousing of Kundalini is the dynamization of Kula Kundalini, the power. This will not cause an excess of pranic force, because the ascent of Kundalini is associated with the withdrawal of prana, causing the suspension to a varying degree of animation. When Kula Kundalini is roused, it becomes uncoiled without being non-Kundalini, and its dynamization causes the absorption of prana. Interesting. And its motion becomes uninterrupted and highly concentrated. It is not necessary to interpret the ascending Kundalini as the dynamic counterpart of the static Kundalini in the Muladhara. Kundalini is actually dynamized, and only when this prodigious power is fully whole and roused does the whole power in concentration and motion transform the mind in the Sahasrara into a supermind, a mind in Samadhi. When Kula Kundalini is dynamized, the Muladhara ceases to be a static center, and Kundalini in 3.5 coils in the Sahasrara becomes the static support. Interesting. This is not to deny that under certain circumstances, the static Kula Kundalini sends forth emanations to exercise control influences on prana. When Kula Kundalini becomes dynamic, Kundalini in the Sahasrara becomes the static support. The 8-coiled Kundalini is absorbed step by step into Kula Kundalini when it passes through the different chakras, thus strengthening the Kula Kundalini motions. When Kula Kundalini reaches the Sahasrara, it becomes united as one with the Sahasrara Kundalini, and the whole Kundalini becomes dynamic. And its static support is Kundalini lying beyond the Sahasrara, extending from the Shiva, the Supreme Bindu, to Shakala Shiva. Okay, so now we're explaining the process of Kundalini gradually becoming more and more dynamic. When Kula Kundalini becomes dynamic, that is when the power of the Kundalini, which is in the root, becomes dynamic, becomes roused by the Mula Bandh, right? That's what we were talking about. The Mula Bandh is the method of rousing this Kula Kundalini power. When it becomes roused, Kundalini in the Sahasrara becomes the static support, right? So it becomes roused, and then there is a negative polarity, a static polarity, which is shifted from the root to the crown. And this is the beginning of absorption, or laya, where you're no longer having this polar relationship with the material world, but now you're having a polar relationship with the spiritual world based on your static support, which is in the crown now, right? So before you were having this relationship with the material world based on a static support in the root, but then it becomes dynamized and the support becomes in the crown, and now you're having this relationship with the spiritual world and no longer with the material. When Kula Kundalini becomes dynamic, the Kundalini in the Sahasrara becomes the static support. The 8-coiled Kundalini is absorbed step by step into Kula Kundalini when it passes through the different chakras, thus strengthening the Kula Kundalini motions. So it's saying the 8-coiled Kundalini, that is the Kundalini around the 8 chakras, starts to become absorbed step by step into the Kula Kundalini. That is the power on the crown center. And I can tell you for sure this is exactly what happens. I've experienced this, and not to the extent that they're showing it on this page, but I've experienced definitely this Kula Kundalini absorbing all of these powers into it. Step by step, you'll feel this process absorbing into the crown. So the 8-coiled Kundalini is absorbed step by step into Kula Kundalini, that is the power on the top of the crown, through the different chakras, thus strengthening the Kula Kundalini motions. When Kula Kundalini reaches the Sahasrara, it becomes united as one with the Sahasrara Kundalini, and the whole Kundalini becomes dynamic. And its static support is the Kundalini lying beyond the Sahasrara and extending from the Supreme Bindu to Shakala Shiva. So this is way, 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 way above the head and deeper, deeper, deeper within the soul, essence, the core of soul. the core of life and spirit. Again, when the united Kundalini as nirvana, all-absorbing power, enters into the beyond Sahasrara Kundalini, Kundalini beyond the Sahasrara, becomes dynamic, and the static support is Paramashiva, Supreme Consciousness. Kundalini is finally absorbed into Supreme Consciousness. These Kundalinis, Kundalini in the Muladhara, the 8 coiled Kundalini, in the other chakras, Kundalini in the Sahasrara, and Kundalini beyond the Sahasrara, are not different entities, but are different aspects of the same Kundalini. Dynamization of Kundalini takes place step by step. The dynamization is essentially the unfoldment of spiritual consciousness and associated yoga power, stage by stage. Prana is the dynamic counterpart of the coiled Kundalini. Prana is the energy whole which creates mind, life, and matter. The jantra, the machine, the real dynamic graph of pranic operations, is the chakra system. So prana is the energy whole which creates mind, life, and matter. Right? Prana is the energy whole which creates mind, life, and matter. So prana is whirling based on the Kundalini consciousness as its support, and it's flying all throughout the cosmos based on this seed water, spirit fire, and thought earth. The Kundalini is the thought earth, you know, and the prana is the spirit fire and the seed water. If you know what the Secret of the Golden Flower books are talking about. So this yantra is the real dynamic graph of pranic operation, the chakra system. The chakras and associated nadis form the nadi organization. Only a part of pranic energy is at play in the body and mind, which is required for the maintenance of vitality and mentation according to one's capacity and possibility. The pranic function at the common level is an unconscious radiation of pranic energy from the chakras into the body. The pranic function at a common level is the unconscious radiation of pranic energy from the chakras into the body. And that aspect of the mind which is functionally connected with the brain. The chakras are the reservoirs of prodigious powers. The chakras are the reservoirs where they're held up. A reservoir is where you hold something up, right? The reservoir of water, like a lake, for us non-English speakers, is what a reservoir is. Of prodigious powers, which are ordinarily latent, static. They can be unfolded by pranayama and concentration. These powers can manifest in the body as great vital, nervous, and muscular strength, and in the mind as various unknown secret forces. They can also be manifested in the body in a wireless manner as superpowers. This maintains all dynamic expression exactly. That's what Radha is. The uncoiling of the coiled central force is an extraordinary occurrence in the human mind and body, its thoughts and actions. It is like a flood of splendorous divine force from which is being released a new form of consciousness, which is not modified by what is called matter at all its levels, and is not dependent upon the mind which mentalizes consciousness. Because of the coiling, this latent central force is called Kundalini. But the meaning of coiling or Kundalini is much deeper than its superficial significance. Latency, quote unquote. Kundalini is in 3.5 coils in the Muladhara, in 8 coils, 1 coil on each of the 8 chakras, in 3.5 coils in the Sahasrara, and 3.5 coils beyond Sahasrara. The first uncoiling of Kundalini takes place in the Muladhara. Second, the uncoiling of the 8th coiled Kundalini. Uncoiling of the 8 coiled Kundalini, uncoiling of the Muladhara Kundalini, uncoiling of the 8 coiled Kundalini, uncoiling of the Sahasrara Kundalini, and finally the Kundalini beyond Sahasrara takes place. Or the uncoiling of the Kundalini beyond Sahasrara takes place. The uncoiling is the process of dynamization of Kundalini occurring in 4 stages. When Kundalini is uncoiled, it becomes the soul dynamism. This dynamism reaches, so that's important to understand. When Kundalini is uncoiled, it becomes the soul dynamism. So when you experience this firsthand, Kundalini becoming the soul dynamism, right? So in other words, the mental and bodily powers are no longer the dynamic factor of yourself, but the spirit becomes the dynamic. The spirit power becomes the dynamic thing. The uncoiling is a process of dynamization of Kundalini occurring in 4 stages. When Kundalini is uncoiled, it becomes the soul dynamism. This dynamism reaches a stage of bodiliness and mindlessness, and again becomes static in the form of infinite, whole, supreme consciousness. Right? And then it becomes static, and then it can evolve even further into Gopal consciousness, yeah? Kundalini is Kola Kundalini is in 3.5 coils in the Muladhara. The 3 coils indicate that the Kundalini is latent in the material, the nadi, and the mental fields. And the half coil shows that the Kundalini is in static form. 1 coil in each chakra indicates that the chakra is inactive and dark, and its powers remain unmanifested. Interesting. Of the 3.5 coils in the Sahasrara, the 3 coils indicate that Kundalini energy remains inoperative in the Amakala, at the Amakala, Nirvana Kala, and Nirvana Shakti points. This means that Samprajñata Samadhi has not been developed. Prakriti has not been absorbed. Ooh. Prakriti has not been absorbed. That's interesting. Prakriti has not been absorbed. And Kundalini has not manifested its all-absorbing power. The half coil is indicative of its static state. Behind the Sahasrara, the first coil is at Parabindu, the second coil is at Paranada, and the third coil is at Shiva Shakti, and the half coil at Shakala Shiva. All this means the highest level of samadhi has not been attained. Asamprajñata Samadhi has not been attained. But the significance of the coils goes further. The latency of Kundalini indicates that it is the static support of prana as dynamism. The latency of Kundalini indicates that it is the static support of prana as dynamism. The dynamic prana is the creative energy supremely concentrated at Bindu and is about to be manifested. At a certain critical moment, the Bindu ejects its dynamic counterpart in the form of an expanded circle, within which the pranic energy becomes more concentrated and assumes a triangular form from which power emanates. Wow. At a certain critical moment, the Bindu, that is the point, ejects its dynamic counterpart in the form of an expanded circle, within which the pranic energy becomes more concentrated and assumes a triangular form from which power emanates. So mysterious. And we're almost done, guys. The triangular embedded circle is the first form of pranic energy radiation, in which lie the 3 power components, technically termed A, O, and In coiled forms which constitute the radiant first mantra, Om. The coiled factor is the replication of Kundalini itself, which is in 2 and 3.5 coils, and the static support of prana. Prana exhibits the characteristic Kundali coil in its motion, which becomes spiral. I see. The pranic impulse consists of 2 principal factors which are exhibited in pranic motion. That is spiral and vertical. And this is also what Alice Bailey says, spiral and vertical motion. The spiral motion creates the dynamic subtle graphs in the form of chakras, or circles called chakras. And the vertical motion causes the emergence of the Sushumna field in which chakras are systematically arranged. So the coil is the fundamental factor which remains in static Kundalini as well as in dynamic prana. The coil is the actual potency which is released in both coiling and uncoiling. The coil is the actual potency. So it's like you have all the energy of the cosmos somehow coiled up, and by coiling and uncoiling it, you're getting this power. When Kundalini begins to be uncoiled, the spiral pranic energy loses its dynamism and begins to be absorbed step by step into dynamic Kundalini. In this way, the chakras are absorbed into Kundalini. When Kundalini is in coils, the pranic dynamism essentially manifests as pranic radiations through the Sushumna. Remember, the Sushumna is the central channel of the Kundalini and the nadis. When Kundalini is in coils, pranic dynamism is essentially manifest in pranic radiations through the Sushumna as centrifugal and centripetal motions without any cessation, and its spiraling aspect goes to the pranic chakras and activates the centralized pranic forces. Interesting. So again, when Kundalini is in coils, pranic dynamism essentially manifests as pranic radiations to the Sushumna as centrifugal and centripetal motions without any cessation. And its spiraling aspect, the Kundalini, goes to the pranic chakras and activates the centralized pranic forces. So the spiraling of the Kundalini in the chakras is somehow activating the pranic forces. So this is something for the realm of Nassim Haramein, talking about the toroids and whatnot. It's reminding me very much of the toroidal field dynamic. The pranic main currents and centralized pranic forces become more efficient functionally by nadi shuddhi, that is the purification of the nadis, when greater control influence is exercised on the body and mind. But when Kundalini begins to be uncoiled, the central Sushumnite prana currents begin to ebb and the centralized pranic forces are gradually withdrawn into the main pranic current. This is shown by the gradual decrease of the basal metabolism of the body and the cessation of the undulations of mental consciousness. The uncoiling of the half coil causes Kundalini to enter into the Brahm Nadi. The uncoiling of the half coil causes Kundalini to enter into the Brahma Nadi. So that's the ultimate super consciousness moment, is when the Kundalini enters into the Brahma Nadi. And this is affected by the uncoiling of the half coil of the Kundalini. The uncoiling of the 3 coils produces control effects on the body, mind, and pranic forces. So you have body, mind, and prana, and this uncoiling exercises control where you are in a position of spiritual polarity and no longer being subservient to your bodily functions. You are in a position of control above them. The effects on, and this has to do a lot with the pineal gland too, I've read. Interesting. The pineal gland is supposedly have to do with regulating sleep and food patterns and all these things with controlling the body. Control center, just like it says here. Okay, so the effects on the pranic forces are 2. The absorption of the central pranic currents and the initiation of the Kundalini motion through the Brahma Nadi. And secondly, changing of the Kundalini Kundalini motion to Kundalini radiation, changing of the Kundalini motion to Kundalini radiation, which causes the revitalization of pranic forces and produces the Nadi Shuddhi effects, that is the purification of the Nadis. The effects on the body are also two. First, the body undergoes a state of motionlessness in a natural manner. And second, the body functions healthfully and more efficiently when it goes back to the ordinary state. The mental effects are also two. Developments of deep concentration and natural unfoldment of spiritual qualities. All this indicates the interrelationship between Kundalini and Prana. Okay, remember, Kundalini is the central Atma, the central Atma, and in relation to the Prana, which is like the expression, the Prakriti, right? So Atma, this is like the relationship between Atma and Prakriti, between this Kundalini and Prana. When Kundalini is in coil, pranic force exhibits its spiral motion by which the body is vitalized and mental dynamism operates. When Kundalini is uncoiled, the spiral energy of prana first becomes coil, and then it is withdrawn into dynamic Kundalini. This causes the body to be naturally in the state of motionlessness and the slowing of vital functioning. Interesting. Oh, okay. So now we're getting to an understanding here. There's like a switching mechanism happening. When the Kundalini is in a coil, pranic force exhibits its spiral motion, and by which the body is vitalized and mental dynamism operates. And remember that the bodily functions and the mental functions are all functions of prana. So this is the active to the passive Kundalini. And when the Kundalini is coiled, it's in its latent form. And when the Kundalini is uncoiled in its active form, the spiral energy of the prana becomes latent, becomes coiled, and is withdrawn into the dynamic Kundalini. This causes the body to be naturally in a state of motionlessness and the slowing of the vital functioning. In this state, the mind functions above perceptive and intellective levels as real concentration. Before being really dynamic, the Kundalini emits radiations through the Sushumna. Under this condition, the mind becomes spiritual in nature, and an urge is felt to make and keep the body purified and vigorous. Kundalini is roused consciously as in Kundalini Yoga, or unconsciously as in various religious and spiritual practices involving deep godly feeling. There are certain circumstances in life when Kundalini is also roused unconsciously. It is intense fear of death, as in severe disease or some great danger, and the deepest unbearable pain or intense happiness. An unconscious arousing of Kundalini may happen. So that's when you feel that tingling going through your body, because you're rousing the Kundalini from the base of your spine, and it's exhibiting an impact on the pranic forces which are spiraling around your body. So when you have these tingles going up your spine, that's a slight uncoiling of the Kundalini and the Muladhara, and so you feel the effects on all of the chakras going through the center of your body, and it sends that shiver up your spine. Let's see, yeah. This is all making so much sense. If sexual desire is conjoined with intense love for each other, Kundalini may be roused unconsciously. When the heightened sexual force in deep love is under restraint in visual experiences or in close contacts, deep concentration at a certain point develops, which rouses Kundalini. But the sexual desire itself has no influence on Kundalini. When Kundalini is roused, sexual desire is fully under control. The arousing of... So there's just one more page to go, and I want to get this finished as a recording for YouTube, so sorry guys. The arousing of Kundalini is never connected with sexual indulgence, but when an intense mental depression is caused by excessive sexual enjoyment, Kundalini may be roused. When intense mental depression is caused by excessive sexual enjoyment, Kundalini may be roused. But if this unconscious rousing is utilized spiritually, then this unconscious rousing becomes highly beneficial. Otherwise, Kundalini goes back to sleep again. On the other hand, highly intensified godly love, bhakti, in which there is no tinge of sexuality in any form, is a most powerful factor in arousing Kundalini. Bhakti is a most powerful factor in arousing Kundalini. In consciously rousing Kundalini, it is felt and seen. The passage of Kundalini through the different chakras is felt and seen. When the roused Kundalini passes through the chakras, they are at first fully illumined, and then concentration becomes deeper. And finally, they are absorbed into Kundalini. In this way, all principles located in different chakras are absorbed step by step. Ultimately, a stage is reached when there is nothing but Kundalini in its subtlest, splendorous, and mind-transcendently conscious form. The meaning of the subtlest is that Kundalini is subtler than anything else. In the material field, elementary particles are the minutest, but Pranavayu is subtler than elementary particles. As Pranavayu is absorbed into Kundalini, so the latter is subtler than the former. In a similar manner, the most refined mind is also absorbed into Kundalini. So it is subtler than mind. So, when a guru is giving wisdom, someone like Jesus is giving you deep wisdom, it's not coming from their mind, it's coming from the mind which is absorbed into Kundalini. The subtler the power, the more forceful it is. And by its forcefulness, it is able to absorb what is grosser than it. So Kundalini cannot function in the material, vital, and mental fields, but it tends to absorb them, to create a non-material, non-vital, and non-mental stratum, where it is in full power and illumination. Interesting. Kundalini is splendorous. Kundalini, quote-unquote, light, has three aspects. Bright, sun-like, bright light. Oh, this is very interesting. Now we're going to talk about the sun-like bright light by which subtle phenomena are illumined and experienced in concentration. Moon-like cool light, which deepens concentration. And fire-like burning light, which exhibits great absorptive power and develops absorptive concentration. Now this is exactly in the style of the Secret of the Golden Flower with the seed, water, spirit fire, and thought earth. Pretty incredible stuff. Kundali power is in the nature of illumination. It first illuminates appropriate objects, and then they are fully absorbed into it. When everything is absorbed, Kundalini's supreme and splendorous power remains, and this power is all consciousness. In other words, this power is Brahman, God. This is not mental consciousness, as mind is fully absorbed into it. It is mind-transcendent consciousness, Kundalini consciousness. When mental consciousness operates in Chitta, its material replica is found in the brain, and certain physical activities become conscious. Otherwise, nervous impulses, neuronal activities, organic and muscular actions, all are unconscious. The power that is capable of absorbing mind and radiates non-mental consciousness light is Kundalini. Absorbing mind and radiating non-mental consciousness light, that power is Kundalini. Absorbs mind and radiates non-mental consciousness light. Kundalini in its fullest manifestation is supreme consciousness. The Kundalini emanates because it absorbs everything into itself, just like consciousness. The Kundalini emanations exercise a control influence on the body and mind, and as a result, the physical and mental activities are fully regulated and forceful. The roused Kundalini withdraws prana in stages. The first sign of pranic withdrawal is the natural establishment of asana, in which the assumed bodily posture is held still, painless and effortless. Second, a gradual decrease of animations. which is accompanied by a decrease of metabolism below the basal metabolic level, a diminution of vital activities, and a prolonged breath suspension occur. This is the stage of pranayama. Third, a complete suspension of sensory function occurs. That's pratyahara. So he's explaining now the 8 processes of Patanjali's yoga system, mystic yoga system. Thereafter, the fully internalized consciousness undergoes the state of dharana, dhyan, and sampragnata samadhi. When Kundalini comes to Sahasrara, sampragnata samadhi takes place. Then Kundalini absorbs superconsciousness and its root, prakriti, and thus being in the mind-transcendent state, it remains alone in asampragnata samadhi. Deep stuff. Finally, Kundalini, in the final stage of asampragnata samadhi, is entirely supreme consciousness, and its power aspect supports the infinite supreme beingness as real. And its power aspect supports the infinite supreme beingness as real. It's Radha. It is directly Radha, this Kundalini. This is a consciousness of Radha herself. She is the all-absorbing consciousness of Krishna. The very power of Krishna. Not different from Krishna. And its power aspect, the Kula Kundalini, supports the infinite supreme beingness as real. The roused Kundalini energy is actually Jama, control power, which develops stage by stage as asana, pranayam, pratyahara, and becomes sagyam, super control, when dharana, dhyan, and sampragnata samadhi are attained. Finally, sagyam is transformed into asampragnata samadhi, the supreme control power. So Kundalini may be termed Samadhi force or Yoga power. Aurobindo has aptly called Kundalini Yoga Shakti, Yoga power. Yoga power actually operates in Kundalini Yoga. After the union with Supreme Shiva, Kundalini goes back to the Muladhara, and in its descent, all the chakras, the powers, and the divinities are all restored. The recoiling process is essentially the spiritualization of consciousness which functions in everyday life. That is, a transference of spiritual reality developed in concentrated consciousness to sense consciousness to be able to realize the spiritual truth in our daily life. In the uncoiling and recoiling of Kundalini, the practitioner of Kundalini Yoga experiences the divine in its formless aspect in supreme concentration, as well as in its form in post-concentration waking consciousness. So Aurobindo calls this Kundalini a divine force. And that goes hand in hand again with the system that we were working with on Uttama Shakti about Prajna and Upaya. Okay, so there's just one little section left in this whole chapter, so I'm just going to read it, and it's called Concentration, and it's done. Concentration is not focused thought, bhavana, but is the process of consisting of dharana, dhyan, and samadhi. It does not come into being unless pratyahara is first established. In focused thought, mental efforts are made to centralize thought on a chosen object, yet it is often diversified, and automatic and uncontrollable penetration of other objective images occurs, and consequently the whole thought system is shaken. Concentration is a mental process of reducing multiform consciousness to a point termed bindu. Interesting. Reducing multiform consciousness to a point is bindu. The development of this mental power is dependent upon the transformation of the diversified pranic forces into a state of pranic concentration and withdrawal, by which the vital and sensory functions become internalized. These are the processes of pranayama and pratyahara. Thereafter, and on the basis of pratyahara, pranic dynamism functions in the mind and rouses the slumbering mentative energy which expresses itself as dharana power, the immensely strong power to hold the one-pointedness of consciousness in the form of only one object for sufficiently long enough time to be effective. This power grows step by step, and it is often possible, and it is then possible to continuously maintain single objectiveness of consciousness uninterruptedly and for prolonged periods of time. This produces very deep concentration, and from that deep concentration a mental light comes into being which can be focused on any object, inner or outer. This state of consciousness is called dhyan. Prolonged and repeated dhyan deepens concentration so that it reaches the bindu state. This is the highest point of mental concentration, in which consciousness is maximally concentrated to a point and the truth-exposing concentration light shines forth. This is samprajñata samadhi. Unfortunately, ultimately, samprajñata samadhi consciousness is coiled into bodiless and mind-transcendent supreme consciousness in asamprajñata samadhi. The general principles of concentration have been modified, specialized, and elaborated in different systems of yoga to suit the particular needs of the practitioners. In the Hatha Yoga method of concentration, an attempt has been made to obliterate the mental reaction effects from the brain by the pranic withdrawal by pranayama. Interesting. It is necessary first to elevate pranayamic breathing to the Nadi Shuddhi level for this purpose. For the effectiveness of the Nadi Shuddhi pranayama, the body needs to be purified and vitalized by the practice of posture exercises, internal cleansing, and right diet. In Raj Yoga, centralized thought combined with spiritual reflection is applied for the attainment of pratyahara. The intensified thought causes pranic withdrawal and sensory control. Thereafter, the dharana power is roused and gradually dhyan and samadhi are attained. In Mantra Yoga, concentration is attained by the use of mantras. Mantra is an aspect of Kundalini and it is its sound form. Mantra is the sound form of Kundalini. So mantra is actually Kundalini in mantra form. The mantra sound cannot be heard by a physical ear. The replication of mantra on the physical plane is the lettered Vaikari sound, which is audible. The Vaikari mantra, in conjunction with pranayama and other special processes, is utilized according to the direction of a guru to enliven the mantra. Interesting. In other words, it is the rousing of Kundalini in mantra form. When the mantra Kundalini is roused, it exhibits its absorptive and control powers by which, step by step, the control of prana and the senses is attained. The influence of outer objects on the mind is neutralized by the mantra power. Consequently, it is a great help in the attainment of pratyahara and self-control. Then, mantra Kundalini is transformed into Ishta Devata. Remember, Ishta Devata is the God in form, Radha Krishna. The metamorphosis of subtle Kundalini through the mantra power into an appropriate divine form. The mantra Kundalini is transformed into Ishta Devata. The metamorphosis of subtle Kundalini through mantra power into appropriate divine form. So now we have the essence of Gaudiya Vaishnavism right here. It's saying, you don't have to know about it, but when you do chant this mantra and visualize Radha Krishna, you are using this Kundalini power to actually reach the Ishta Devata. At this stage, dharana and dhyana are attained. After this, Ishta Devata is again transformed into subtle Kundalini when samprajñata samadhi is attained. Finally, Kundalini absorbs the mind and all other things and remains alone, and is then absorbed into supreme consciousness in asamprajñata samadhi. In Kundalini Yoga, which is fundamental part of Laya Yoga, concentration is attained through roused Kundalini. So in this yoga, the rousing of Kundalini is the essential process. The rousing is only possible in the Muladhara Chakra. Focused thought is the main factor of the rousing process. The intensified thought, in conjunction with pranayamic breathing, mantras, and bandhas, becomes so forceful that ultimately it makes static Kundalini dynamic. If the centralized thought is imbibed with intense godly love, thought power is much enhanced. The roused Kundalini exhibits higher control, power by which dharana, dhyan, and samadhi are attained.